Content blockers were introduced in iOS 9 to allow developers to create apps that blocked items from certain websites in Safari. They've primarily been used to create ad blockers, which are now widely used on iOS. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own. It's actually extremely easy to do. So we'll jump over to Xcode and create a new project. And we'll create a single view application. I'll call it my content blocker. Store it in the usual place on the desktop, and then I'm going to add a new target to the app, as we've done several times before, and unsurprisingly this time we want iOS application extension content blocker extension. So click next. I'll just call it CB for content blocker, and then let's have a look inside and see what we've got. So only 3 files, one of which is an info.plist, which we're not going to have anything to do with. And actually this file here is very limited with what code we can put in. We're actually going to leave this completely as is and do all our development for our content blocker in blockerlist.json. And this is a JSON file, a JavaScript object notation file of the type that we've seen before. And all we need to do is put our various triggers and filters into this file. So let's say, for example, that you wanted to build your own distraction filter. So you wanted to block sites that you were tempted to visit. Well, you might enter something like .star reddit.star. And this will block any URL with Reddit in the name anywhere. This .star is part of what are known as regular expressions, which if you get into content blocking, then you'll need to look up in more detail. But for now, all we need to know is that content star means essentially anything. So this URL filter means filter anything which has some text followed by Reddit, followed by some more text. And you can see by the action type that we're blocking anything that falls under that filter. So let's see how it works. We'll run it on the simulator, on my iPhone 6s simulator. And I'm going to run the original content blocker target rather than the CB extension. Either should work actually fine, but running the content blocker means I don't have to choose another app to launch. So we're going to have to run our content blocker app and then go back to the home screen to set up content blocking. So there's our app, our nice blank screen. So just press Command-Shift-H to go back to the home screen and then over to Settings and Safari and Content Blockers. There we go. So now we have one content blocker, that's ours, and we're going to switch that on. And then back to home, and I'm going to load up Safari. So my previous Google for Homer Simpson should work fine as long as the word Reddit doesn't appear in the URL anywhere. But if I try and go to reddit.com, then you'll see the error was the URL was blocked by a content blocker. Great, so our content blocking is working as required. Let's add another rule that's a little bit more cautious than the rule that we've added so far. So this rule, the one that we've already got, will block anything with the word Reddit in the URL. Now, for some cases, we might want to be a bit more careful than that and just block a specific URL. So let's say we want to block CNN.com, but we don't just want to block anything with the word or letters CNN in it. Then we can use a more complex regular expression, which looks like this. Now, might not make a lot of sense, but actually we can explain what's going on here quite easily. So first off, we're blocking things that look both like this and also like this. So that question mark means the letter before it is optional. It might have an S or it might not. So these are secure URLs and these are insecure URLs, and we might get traffic from both of these. So that question mark takes care of that. Then we're definitely going to have a colon //. We may or may not have a www. It might look like that, or it might look like that. So this is optional. And then again, we've got CNN dot and a star, because we could have potentially different extensions at the end of the URL. So let's try that out. We should now be able to block CNN.star, but not be blocking other domains which have CNN in the URL. And just before we run that, I need to add in a comma there to separate out my two rules. So just after that curly bracket there in the middle. So now when we run it again, we'll need to go back over to settings and just deactivate and reactivate the content blocker. And now if we go to CNN.com, as I already have there, you can see that was blocked as well. If we go to a CNN.com, however, that will not be blocked. Not that we'd be particularly interested in doing so. Unlike a Reddit.com, because we've blocked everything here with the word Reddit in anywhere. Whereas here we've been a little more careful. There's one more thing I'd like to show you while we're talking about content blockers, and that is that we don't need to necessarily block by the URL. We can block by the contents of a page as well. So let's align everything nicely. Let's say that we wanted to block all links to reddit.com, which will tempt us even less to go to the site. So here, this time, we're going to change the action to CSS display none, which means we'll use cascading style sheets. If you haven't used those before, then they are what the web uses to style web pages. So if we apply the CSS style display none, that will obviously not display this particular content. And then we can apply a selector, and we can use any CSS selector we like here. So if you know CSS, you can use a whole range of selectors to select things by their ID or their class, but I'm going to select them by the content of the link. And we do that using an A, because A is the letter we use to represent links in web development. And I want to select everything with a hyperreference or link address of www.reddit. So this will look for anything with www.reddit in the link, not in the URL. And then we could just change the URL to any website. So now we're not blocking whole pages, we're just making bits of those pages disappear. And that's really the key. If you want to develop an ad blocker, you don't want to block whole pages from what people can see. You want to block individual bits of content. And that's how it's done. All right, so that's how we create ad blockers or content blockers in general. Feel free to try this last one and then create some perhaps to help with your own self-control or to release something that other users might find useful. Either way, I hope you enjoy the content blocker features introduced in iOS 9.